Greetings. Faculty Spotlights focus on a method or a technique that an instructor uses to increase student engagement in their course. Spotlights include a recorded interview with the instructor, as well as links to related materials and how-to information. This particular spotlight focuses on Gina Brandolino, an instructor in the Sweetland Center for Writing. She moved from paper-based grading to online grading in Canvas. Here's her story.
So what were you hoping to accomplish with this project?
Well, I've been teaching for about 20 years, and for that whole time I have graded papers artisanally, as I like to say, by hand, on paper with a pen or a pencil. And I wanted to make one move closer to being paperless in my pedagogy. And so my hope was to implement grading practice that allowed me to do that. But the challenge was that my grading practice relies heavily on the ability to grade on a page, not type comments. And so I needed to find some way of doing the grading technologically that preserved that.
So can you start us off by describing the old process, the way it was before you made any changes?
So what would happen is I would have students either turn in papers in class or have the papers turned in on what was then C-Tools or is now Canvas. The thing is, if students turned papers in class, then I had a stack of papers, but if students turned in papers electronically, I had this extra step I had to go through of printing all of the papers before I could grade them, because I graded them on paper, and then hand them back in class at the end of class session.
Can you tell us about the new way?
My new process involved having students submit papers completely on Canvas. I graded them online and returned student papers using Canvas so that I didn't even need to go through the process of passing them back in class.
Was it just a matter then of creating an assignment for each essay? What were some of the selections that you chose?
Well, it was a little bit intimidating at first because I am not a natural with technology to find my way around the assignments function of Canvas. I am used to using pedagogical tools online, but I'm used to using the ones I know. And being outside of my comfort zone made me a little bit nervous, but I found that the assignments function of Canvas was really quite easy to use, and I made decisions. For instance, once I selected that students would turn in their papers online, it would be an online submission. Yep. I had to make decisions about what file formats I would accept, right. To make decisions about how long the assignment would stay on the Canvas site and students would be allowed to submit assignments. And that was really it. I mean, other than that, and cutting and pasting my assignment instructions from the assignment sheet I always give students, it was really quite similar to my usual process in terms of making an assignment.
So what were some of the challenges?
One challenge that has gone sort of unremarked upon in our conversation so far is that I am not technologically savvy. And so the big hurdle of making the decision to do this and then sort of stick to it was a hurdle, and it was something that the grant really helped me get over. So I felt like the grant was sort of the extra push that I needed to do this. But another hurdle was figuring out the details of grading by hand online, not using typing, not using comment function, but being able to use a stylus. Because Canvas, while it's good for many things, does not accommodate a stylus use very well. It's possible to do it, but you just don't have the same facility that you have with other programs. So I ended up finding an alternative program to use called Drawboard. And Drawboard allowed me to use the stylus exactly as if it were a pen or a pencil or a marker. I would have to download papers, upload them to Drawboard, save them again, and then resave them to Canvas. Figuring that series of turns, that was hard, that was difficult, but it was something ultimately overcomable. The other challenge was my rubric. My rubric is a holistic rubric, which means that I don't have point amounts associated with each of the areas on my rubric, but rather I have sort of grade areas, A, B, C, and D, and I indicate specific areas where students are falling, for instance, with their thesis statement or their argument or their use of evidence. And Canvas is not yet capable of accommodating that kind of rubric, so I had to find a workaround there too.
In general then, it sounds like it had impact on you as an instructor.
I feel proud that the thing that I set out to do, which was use less paper, I really have done, because I went through a lot of paper. I also saved a lot of class time. It doesn't seem like a lot when you think about, well, it's just passing back papers, how long can it take? But I think there's sort of a lot of setup you have to do before you hand back papers, and then there's the actual handing back in a class of 50. That takes at least 10 or 15 minutes, and that is class time that you just don't get back. There's one more, which is I'm a lecturer, which means that I go through a regular review process, and part of that review process requires me to produce examples of my work grading papers. Normally what happens when I am called upon to produce these examples is that, I have to hurry to make some rather than have them at the ready saved from a previous semester. And so now, after grading with a semester on my tablet, I have close to 300 graded papers saved and ready for me to use as samples in my review.
From the student perspective, did it help facilitate office hours?
Yeah, absolutely, and whenever they need to. So, and that works both ways. For instance, if they come to my office and they want to talk about a paper that they had done and gotten feedback on, and they don't have it with them and don't have their laptop, I'm like, well, my computer's right here. We can just pull it up on my computer. So it definitely, I think, works for students the same way it does for me, in that it creates a record that they can use. But there's another benefit for students, I think, and I had forgotten about this because I'd been on the other side of the desk for so long. I'd forgotten that it's really stressful, even if you did well on a paper, to wait and get that paper back in class and hear what the teacher says about all of the papers and how students did, and worry about what you got, and get your paper back in a situation where you're around all of your peers. I think that there's something dignified about being able to read the comments and learn the grade in the privacy of your own room or your own
where
home.
you choose to
Yeah.
where you choose
Right.
to take a look at what was
Absolutely.
said. Thinking back and looking at the grade book, anything you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. It took me some time to learn how to use gradebook in the best ways. Like, a thing that was sort of a stumbling block for me was there's a range of dates you can put up for when the assignment becomes available and when students can stop seeing the assignments. Yeah. And I always thought, well, why will they need to see it the day after it's due? Well, if somebody doesn't submit a paper on time, they still need that assignment to be up. So I learned the hard way, having assignments disappear before students could actually submit, that you have to leave that up. You had taught me, Carla, about giving all my assignments a due date on Canvas, even though initially I thought, well, this is kind of silly because the due date is actually listed on the assignment sheet. Why do I have to enter it into Canvas? And when you told me, no, if you enter it into Canvas, then it'll show up in red when students submit late. That actually is very useful, especially if you have a lot of papers to grade, to have those flagged.
Little flags.
Where you can see. Mm-hmm. I've found the gradebook to be really useful, and I don't have this anxiety that I used to have about, where's my grade book? It's always right where I expect it on my computer. Whatever computer I turn on, it's right there.
And I think that wraps it up for us today. If you want to see more information about Gina's project, we'll be posting that on the LTC website, and we'll also be including student samples and some how-to information. Thanks once again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.